before you buy your next piece of tech, watch this, because there are 5 myths that you probably still believe today that are wrong, that are either pushed by marketing or have been led to believe by for a while, or just flat out wrong. And I'm going to break down the top 5 and what you should be looking for instead. And the first one is megapixels. So what is megapixels? So you've probably heard this before, like bigger megapixels. Every year a phone comes out and they'll be like 50 megapixel camera sensor, and they talk about how good and great it's going to be. But does that necessarily affect your camera quality? Because for the longest time, iPhones, they had a 12 megapixel camera and they did really well, especially with their video compared to these 50 megapixel phones. So is it really just the megapixels that's going to help you have a good picture or video? And the answer might not be what you think. The real quality comes from the size of the sensor, the lens, and the AI, or the processing that comes with the phone or camera. And so the first thing is the size of the sensor is going to affect a lot more than the count of megapixels. Because if you look at what a sensor is, it is a square box that when it takes a picture, the light is let in and it's put onto these mini cubes, you could say, that are capturing the light and data needed to process the picture. So the bigger the sensor is, the more light it's going to be able to capture. That's why these 12 megapixel sensors from Apple did so well, because their sensors were a little bit bigger compared to like a 50 megapixel camera, and the quality, the lighting's just not there. It's kind of dull. And so that's going to affect a lot more. The hardware that they put into these phones and just the processing system behind it has a huge deal. Like if you look at Google or Samsung, they do a lot of like posts when it comes to their pictures. A lot of their photos look a little more vibrant. And so these phones are putting a lot more effort into the posts. Now, it is important to have a phone that can take a quality picture, but the post and what it's able to do behind is going to help a lot more. So you need a bigger sensor, you need good camera lenses, but you need good software to post this picture. So that's why a big sensor is super important. Now, when you think of a sensor, it is like little boxes that capture light. So in theory, a high megapixel camera is going to do really well. But if the sensor is small, you have really small boxes and it's really hard for it to grab all this light. So with the iPhones, it has a 48 megapixel sensor, but it's able to make the boxes bigger. It could go from like 12, 24, 48, depending on if it's light, if it's dark, so depending on the situation. So they're able to do a lot with this software, but yes, it does depend more solely on the sensor size. So next time you go to buy something, make sure you check the size of the sensor and not just look at the megapixel count. So yeah, megapixels don't necessarily just mean better photos, but this next one can help you save a lot more money. And it's about RAM. And RAM is all the behind processing stuff that keeps your computer fast and smooth. It's kind of like storage. If you think of your phone, the higher the RAM is, the more smooth it's going to be, because it's able to hold a lot more memory of the apps you're using previously and sync back into them faster without having to reload the app. So RAM can be super helpful, but especially nowadays, RAM might not necessarily equal faster time. Now, yes, it can, but there's a lot more that goes into it than just the number of RAM that you have. So people will see like 16 or 24 gigs of RAM and be like, oh, that's fast, which can be true, but there's more that goes into it. Like how integrated is the system, is the chip? Because you can have like a chip that's very integrated and has less RAM, but can hold and do a lot more than a phone or a computer that has a lot more RAM, but everything is far apart and it's not very integrated very well. So that's a big thing to recognize. Like with Apple Silicon, their chips are so well built and compact that the RAM is as high, but it still works very smoothly. Most of the time too is, unless you're doing hardcore things on your computer or phone, like when it comes to editing or gaming or these hard tasks on your computer, like coding, it's going to take a lot more RAM or memory to run these applications. Where if you're just a regular user, having more RAM isn't necessarily going to do much unless you are doing these super heavy tasks where you're doing, 4K rendering, or you're coding some big app, or you're playing a game that's going to cost a lot of data or memory. And so those are some things to consider as well. So next time you look at RAM, consider first off, what are you using it for, and how integrated and how well does the system use it. But usually higher RAM does mean faster speeds, but make sure you do a little bit more research, because numbers don't tell the full story. They tell the story, just not the full thing. So next time you go to buy extra RAM, make sure that you actually going to use it, and you're not just gonna buy more RAM and then just never use it. Because if you buy more RAM, don't use it, it's a waste of money. Now this one's a good one. So every year, especially around September, October, we see the big Techtober, as Marquez calls it, where all these big companies are dropping their phones. We got Apple, Google, Samsung's usually around the corner, where every year they drop their big flagship. Maybe it's the foldable, maybe it's the new Galaxy S, maybe it's the new iPhone. This year was a 17 Pro. And there's a big myth that a lot of people get trapped into. Apple every year is like, you can get $800 off your new phone if you trade it in. And people do it. Every year they upgrade their new phone. Now, is this cost effective, and is it worth the amount of money you're paying to the upgrades that you're getting to your phone? Now, for example, we could look at the iPhone 17 Pro and the iPhone 16 Pro. Not much really changed. Yes, the camera's got a little bit of a bump. You've got a slightly bigger battery, and you got the vapor chamber. But compared to the 16, it's probably not worth the $300 to $400 that you're gonna be spending. Now think about that every single year. The $400 you're getting, or you're spending for a new phone, isn't coming back to your phone. Now, if you did this every couple years, it could make sense. But if you're doing this every single year, it doesn't make as much sense, because you're not reaping the rewards of putting that $300 to $400 into your phone. Now, maybe you get lucky and they drop a new big update, could be worth it. But when it comes to buying a new phone, I would say every 2 to 3 years is more of a safe bet, to where you're getting more bang for your buck than just every year spending that, $300, when in reality, you can't even tell the difference, unless it's a big, redesign, but even then. So next time, double check, are you actually upgrading, or is Apple selling you on their marketing? Take a look. Now, this next one is something that a lot of people get wrong, and something that you should probably change immediately on your phone. So almost every single phone, flagship and non-flagship, now have screens that run 120 hertz, where it can go from 1 hertz to 120 hertz. When your phone is sitting there idling, it's around 1 hertz, which is very slow. It's to help save battery, and it'll ramp up maybe when you're scrolling on your phone. Maybe you're searching the web or typing something to the ChatGPT, and you gotta scroll and find an answer. It's gonna ramp up the hertz so that it is smooth to the eye, and when you touch it, it just feels smooth, coherent. And what a lot of people think is, if I switch it to just 60 hertz flat all the time, I'm gonna save battery. And actually, that is not true. The reason why they do this is because most of the time, your phone is in the lower hertz range. If you're watching a video, like, it's not running 120 hertz max, it's gonna try and keep it lower to save battery. So when you put your phone in a 60 hertz mode, your experience in your phone is gonna feel a little bit more laggy, and you're probably gonna end up draining more battery than if you just kept it on the 120 hertz and had it on the adaptive refresh rate. So when you buy a new phone, or if you have changed it, make sure to put on the 120 hertz refresh rate, because it's variability, so it'll change from 1 to 120 and anywhere in between to save battery, but to also make your phone feel faster. Now this one could be a big money waster for a lot of people who don't really know much about tech, and that is your charging cable. Now there is a lot of charging cables out there, and it's good to know what you're buying, because if you buy the wrong one, you could just end up wasting a lot of money. Some people think if you buy a more expensive charger, that equals faster charging, which is not true. And make sure you look at the back. How many watts is it putting in? With phones going to USB-C, some phones don't support faster data speeds. Like the iPhone 17 base model doesn't have faster speeds than the 17 Pro. Just how it is. And other phones are like that as well. So make sure you're buying a brick that supports the speed that your phone can charge, because otherwise you're just going to be spending, a lot of money, and your phone can't even support the fast charging. Now there are cool chargers out there where it can tell you how fast or how many watts it's putting into your phone and cool stuff like that. But when it comes down to a good brick and charging cable, make sure that you buy something that is actually going to be used for your phone and will be fast, but it'll be durable and stuff like that. So make sure you just do a little bit more research, because you can waste a lot of money on just buying something that's not going to help you out at all. So here are the 5 myths that I wanted to check out today, and comment down below on some of the myths that you thought you believed in, and on what you think of them now. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. We're gonna be posting these every week, so stay tuned for the one next week, and check out my last video talking about all the new tech updates of last week, and we'll be dropping one another this week, so stay tuned for that. We'll catch you in the next one. See ya.